Hey, y'all need a break. Listen to these stories from r/AskReddit. Women who gave the creep a chance. How did it go? He secretly made a copy of my house key and would let himself in while I was at work to read my diary. I ignored my gut feeling about him, overlooked his strange tendencies and tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. We were together for almost 2 years. The entire relationship, he added girls he didn't even know on Snapchat and would say rather inappropriate things to them. Being that you know nothing about strangers on that app, I'm now aware that one of the girls was a minor. He was 26. On my 22nd birthday he had invited my best friend to sleep in our bed with us, and the first time he met my sister he gave her the same invitation. He gave both of those invitations right in front of my face. When we were out together and he saw someone attractive he wouldn't just glance, he stared. He regularly talked crap on my family, and is just generally an awful person. I was his first real girlfriend and he was and is extremely self-centered and mentally abusive. That ended almost a year ago and he still goes to our regular hangouts and asks about me, when I come in, where I'm living, who I'm seeing, etc. My takeaway from that whole situation is, always trust your gut feeling about people. I walked in on him peeing in my washing machine after letting him in my home for some reason. He slit his wrists and showed me on FaceTime the blood dripping out while he was crying. Just because I broke up with him. A friend's ex did the same, he only sent photos though. We called an ambulance who called the fire department to break open his front door. It turned out to be hot sauce. He had to pay for the whole, pricey event. She never heard from him again. The dude in the flat across from mine started off as a really nice guy. Introduced himself, offered meals when he'd cooked too much. Just a great guy all round. Within a few weeks, it was made clear that he was an alcoholic. I have a recovering brother, so I really sympathized with him. I went out of my way to sit with him, and eventually called him an ambulance when he fitted from withdrawals, UK, so calling an ambulance is free. This carried on for a little while, with me sitting with him 2 or 3 times a week, waiting for an ambulance. One night after he started fitting, he kept grabbing my breasts. I was already on the phone to the ambulance service, but the woman heard me telling him to stop and sent police as well. He was carted off, and just like usual, I grabbed his keys and told him to knock for them the next morning. Well, the next time I looked after him, the groping got worse. And then slowly so did my life. Suddenly I had fires set outside my windows, and mutilated rat corpses left on my doorstep. The police were called after every incident, and I got to know one policeman who was put on my case really well. He suggested I put up cameras, so I did. There was footage of the neighbor standing outside in the yard at 3 a.m., just staring into my window, multiple nights in a row. Terrifying, but not illegal. Well, 2 weeks after that, my neighbor snapped. There were builders in the garden next to ours, and they apparently woke him up at 4 p.m. He ran out with a kitchen knife and stabbed 2 of the builders and the neighbor's dog. Everyone survived. He also slashed a whole bunch of tires on our street. When the police came to search the dude's flat, my policeman friend told me, off the books, that the neighbor had been faking being an alcoholic the entire time. He'd get in the ambulance, ride to the hospital, and then check himself out and walk home. Also, they found half a dozen decomposing rats in his bathtub they'd been mutilated. They later found a bloody hammer under his bed. You'd think him being arrested would be the end of it, but no. He put my name, picture, address, and telephone number on a prostitution site. I had men aggressively hounding me for intercourse multiple times an hour for 2 entire weeks before I just cut all ties and fled the city. Last I heard, he was in jail for the grievous bodily harm, but that was a few years ago now. Yeah. Never gonna make the same mistake again. There was a guy that came into my work restaurant a few times a week for lunch. He did this for a little over a month, so he became a regular. He had asked me out every time I brought his bill. He always asked in a light-hearted way and never seemed upset or anything when I turned him down. I assumed that after the first few asks, he maybe thought of it as more of an inside joke at that point. Like he was just asking now to make light of the previous rejections and to make it less awkward or something. He always gave me weird vibes but seemed nice enough, so I thought I might have just been making assumptions because of his appearance and wasn't being fair. One time that he asked, I decided randomly to agree and give him a shot. Why not, I thought. He was always super kind and I had gotten rather used to the awkwardness I felt being around him. He seemed so excited and I asked him to leave his number on the receipt and I would call/text him when I wasn't busy to set something up. So it wasn't really much of a joke to keep asking me out. I mostly figured that though, to be honest. A few days later, I hadn't texted him yet to set anything up or even give him my number, and I get a text only a few minutes after walking into my house after I got home from work. It said, "Hey, it's blank from blank. I know it's a long shot but I'm free tonight and bored, wanna hang out? If you're free, that is." I asked him how he got my number. He said I gave it to him the night I agreed. I absolutely know I didn't. I got really creeped out but decided not to confront him about it and just play like I'm a ditz and believe that I must have done that. I just didn't remember because it was busy. I told him that I wasn't free to hang out that night, that I was going to be working later to help cover a shift and then would be pretty pooped by the time I was off. I only ever saw him come in for lunch, not ever dinner shifts. A few minutes passed before he responded. He said, "Why are you lying to me?" I just responded with, "What? LOL. He said, "I know you are home. If you didn't want to hang out tonight you could have just said so." Alarm bells rang in my head. I thought, there's no way he's outside my house. He is just trying to call my bluff. Creepy but not a full-blown stalker. But I felt exposed. I felt the crawling on my skin that only burns into you when someone is staring at you. The vulnerable pulses that are felt only by prey. I looked out through the blinds of my bedroom and he was parked right outside my house. I could see his face lit up by the phone screen. He was so close. I texted him and said, "Ahaha, you caught me. How did you know I was bluffing? I'm sorry. I do want to hang out soon, I'm just not feeling up to it tonight." And called 911. The police showed up and went up to his car and talked to him for a bit. He drove away a few minutes later and then the officers came to my door. They told me that they acted like a random neighbor complained about a strange car. They didn't implicate anyone but made it seem like it was an older person, so probably not me. They took his plate information but asked him politely to move so he didn't upset anyone in the neighborhood and he complied. I went to my friend's house that night and filed a restraining order the next morning. I later found out that he most likely got my number from the shift sheet behind the hostess counter, because several co-workers had seen him, at different times, snooping back there and kindly stopped him. He, I guess, grabbed a roll of silverware claiming that the server hadn't left him any, and he didn't want to bother anyone because he knew they were busy, so just grabbed it himself. This stopped anyone from suspecting him of anything odd. And that his car had been parked at my house almost every night, neighbor's security camera. I don't know how he got my address but I assume he must have followed me. He must have been full on stalking me for a while. He did come into my work a day or two later for lunch acting like everything was normal. I immediately went and got my manager and she informed him that he had a restraining order against him, preventing him from eating there because he would be in violation of it. I had already changed my phone number so I don't know if he tried to text me, and I didn't sleep at my house for weeks, but I never saw him again after that. And I often find myself thinking back to that time and wondering how much more did he do and for how long that I don't know about. Like, maybe he stalked me long before he started coming into the restaurant, and only started coming in there because he felt more brave than before to interact with me. How much of my private moments throughout my life were actually not private? Also, I have never once stopped feeling scared that he might have still stalked me and knows where I am even now, but is keeping himself hidden. I doubt it, but the fear is still there. I have never felt comfortable being alone. Ever. Most of this would have still probably happened even if I didn't agree to give him a chance. But if he hadn't slipped up about having my phone number when he shouldn't, I would have gone out somewhere with him, and who knows how badly that could have ended. If your gut feeling tells you he's a creep, then he is most definitely a creep. Don't let the nice guys guilt trip and gaslight you into doubting your own intuition with their narrative. He stalked me for almost 8 months, and I still do not want to know how he got my address. I was 19, he was 31. God, I was so naive. I had a bad vibe, but my friend told me he was a good guy. So we went on a date and he asked to drive my car. He curbed my rims and talked about how he was fired unfairly from his job. The next weekend I avoided his calls and instead went out to dinner with friends. While I was gone, he broke into my apartment. My neighbors and the cops were waiting outside when I got home. I spent the night at my mom's. He showed up at 3 a.m. when they let him out and was trying to get in a window. Wonderful officer spent the rest of the night in the driveway. Fast forward a couple weeks and he shows up at my work, mopes over to me and hands me folded papers. It was 8 to 10 handwritten front and back notebook papers, where he alternated between telling me I was the love of his life, to why he hated me and wished I would die. I was terrified. Security escorted him away. Never saw him again, but found out later he did the same thing to some girl in Spokane, but he was able to actually get in, beat her and landed her in the hospital. Edit, the friend was dating my best friend and the good guy was his cousin. I think he really wanted us to hit it off so the 4 of us could all hang out together or something. He was shocked by the actions of his cousin but did tell me later that he had thought he changed. They're not longer dating and haven't talked to him in years and years. This happened 20 years ago in the Pacific Northwest. Guy had serious untreated mental health problems, which resulted in him spending 4 years stalking me and making me resent giving that one chance. I made multiple calls to police and paramedics because he would call me up threatening suicide unless I would help him. He still finds me on social medias and random gaming apps to say, "Hi, I miss you, but I now live more than 1,000 kilometers away." Back in high school, several of my female friends and I also female, had an off period before lunch, so we were all sitting around a table chatting. One of the female security guards came up to us and told me that there was a new exchange student from Amsterdam that thought I was cute, but he was too nervous to come over and introduce himself. I have zero interest in men, but I figured there wasn't any harm in letting the guy come sit with us and helping him feel more comfortable at our school. So he comes over, sits down with us, and chats a bit. He seemed rather shy, and he had about a dozen piercings going up each arm that he kept fiddling with, and a bunch of facial piercings. Then class lets out and people, including a bunch of my male friends, start showing up for lunch. First male friend sits down and introduces himself. New guy doesn't not respond at all, doesn't even look at friend. Weird. Maybe just shy. Second male friend comes and sits down. Same thing. Slightly unsettling now. We kept trying to include him over lunch, but he would only respond to the women. Wouldn't even acknowledge the other guys at the table. I never talked to him again after that lunch period, and 2 weeks later, he got expelled for slamming a girl against a locker and choking her to the point she nearly passed out. Met him when I worked as a cashier in a small downtown shop. Wasn't my type and seemed a little off, but I was young and had zero real dating experience. Agreed to grab coffee as a friend and made it clear I didn't have a romantic interest. He became convinced he was Gatsby and I was his Daisy. The Great Gatsby film had just come out that year. Started stalking me and endlessly sending letters and gifts to me at work describing how we were fated to be together. When I confronted him to stop, he started having his friends follow me at work or drop by to check in on me. Prowled outside on nights I had to close shop alone. I ended up quitting that job and things fizzled. 7 months later I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the same dude. He just got released from a short prison sentence and was letting me know he thought of me every day, and was going to find me so we could finally be together. I made up a story that I was traveling abroad for college and would be gone indefinitely. Changed my number and luckily haven't heard from him again. Did one video chat with him during which he asked if he could, call me again later in the day. When I told him, no, I'll be busy, I started getting random text messages throughout my day that said, "Are you okay? Just let me know you're okay." The first I responded to, I said, "Hey, yeah, I'm fine. I just hung up with you 30 minutes ago, bud." He took that as a sign that I wanted to talk more, so he attempted another video call. When I didn't respond, he started again with the texts. Didn't even bother responding to the rest. Up to 20 unread messages later before I was able to block him while leaving him unread. Knew he was weird before the first date. I was sad and thought maybe he'd be different in person. Showed up to the date and he walked with a crazy limp, told me he was into peace stuff, wouldn't pay for dinner, tried to kiss me 3 times. When I got home that night he sent me a full body nude completely out of the blue. I never saw him again. He texted me 3 months later to tell me I was the worst human and most selfish person he's ever met. And then he blocked me. I bought him a coffee one time and we chatted about our music tastes. 3 days later, I was sitting in my dorm and I got a text from him that was just a selfie. I sent one back and the conversation got really boring, so I sent him a snap of a black screen. He responded, "Are you in a dark place?" And I said, "Yeah, LOL." His response was, "Well, you'll have to leave soon because you have class in, insert building with insert professor, at 6 o'clock. I literally never told him anything about my classes, so he just effing stalked me until he learned my entire schedule. It turns out he was a serial creep preying on freshman girls. On our first date, he told me he loved me and that he would let me pick out the color of our house. The rest of the evening was super awkward. I never talked to him again. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.